3 hours earlier, I had still believed I was spending the weekend alone. My sister Claire had rented a small mountain cabin outside Aspen for a pre-wedding planning trip. Flowers, seating charts, too many opinions, all the things people call joyful when they're not the ones carrying folding chairs in freezing weather. I only came because Claire texted me, "If you love me at all, bring the extra lanterns and stop Dad from trying to build a fire with printed directions." So I drove up Friday afternoon in a snowstorm with lanterns in the trunk, coffee in the cup holder, and absolutely no reason to expect Nora Whitmore to be standing on the porch when I got there. I hadn't seen her in 7 months, not properly. Not beyond one accidental glimpse across a farmer's market in October, where she pretended not to notice me, and I pretended not to care. That's the kind of thing people do when they're hurt and stupid and still not over it. Her name was Nora, and for most of my adult life, she had been the first person I called when anything happened. Good things, bad things, flat tire things, existential at 2 in the morning things. We met freshman year of college because she stole my fries. Not one fry, a whole handful. I was sitting outside the student union, trying to eat in peace when she dropped into the chair across from me, took my food like we'd known each other for years, and said, "You looked like someone who needed company." "That's not a legal defense," I told her. "It's not theft if you were emotionally available," she said. That was Nora. Funny in a way that always sounded casual even when it hit perfectly. Pretty in a way that annoyed me because she never seemed aware of it. The kind of person who could walk into any room and make it feel warmer without trying. After that, she became my person so slowly, I never noticed the exact moment it happened. Coffee runs, long drives, bad movies, better conversations. She knew how I took my coffee, how I folded my sleeves when I was stressed, how quiet I got when I was angry. I knew when she was lying by the way she said obviously, and when she was sad by the way she cleaned things that didn't need cleaning. People made comments. They always do. My sister once watched us arguing over a playlist in my kitchen and said, "You two are either soulmates or a public safety issue." Nora laughed. I did too. Then we kept doing what we always did, staying close enough to matter, never honest enough to risk it. The end came fast. Too fast. Nora got an offer from a design firm in London. I found out from someone else at a goodbye drinks thing I hadn't even known was a goodbye drinks thing. I remember looking at her across that bar and thinking, "You were really going to leave without telling me yourself?" She followed me outside, tried to explain. I didn't let her. I said something about how people only hide things when they already know they're doing damage. She said, "That's not fair." I said, "No. What's not fair is making me feel stupid for thinking I mattered enough to hear it first." She looked like I had slapped her. Then she said very quietly, "You do matter first. That's why I couldn't say it." I should have stopped there. I should have asked what that meant. Instead, I was angry and proud and already hurt, which is a terrible combination in a man with a functioning mouth. So I told her to have a nice life in London. She never went. I found that out weeks later. By then, we had already broken something neither of us knew how to fix. So, when I stepped out of the snow and saw her on my sister's porch in a dark green sweater, hands tucked into her sleeves against the cold, my whole body reacted before my brain did. Nora looked just as startled, then guarded, then annoyed, which was more familiar. You didn't tell me he was coming," she said over her shoulder into the cabin. Claire appeared in the doorway behind her with the face of a woman who knew she had created a disaster and had chosen not to care. "I invited both of you," my sister said, "because unlike the two of you, I'm tired of committing to the bit." "The bit?" I repeated. "Pretending you're strangers," Claire said. "Come inside. Dad already burned one dish towel." That was how the weekend started. Badly. The cabin was warm, overfull, and half organized in that family trip way where everyone had brought too much luggage and not enough patience. My parents had the downstairs room, Claire and her fiancé had the loft. The guest room upstairs had a burst pipe that morning, which left exactly one usable sleeping space. One bed. In the little den off the main hall. I laughed when Claire told me. Nora didn't. Claire just crossed her arms and said, "You are both in your 30s. Act accordingly." That would have been easier if Nora and I knew how to be in the same room, without every old wound showing up 5 seconds early. We spent dinner talking around each other. My mother asked Nora about work. Nora answered politely. My father asked if I was still considering selling my truck. I said no. Claire kept looking between us like she was waiting for one of us to finally break first. It happened after 10. The fire was low. The snow outside had gotten thicker. Everyone else drifted off one by one until only Nora and I were left in the den with one lamp on and a bed too narrow to ignore. She took the left side without discussing it. I took the right. And there was a full 18 inches of mattress between us, and still somehow not enough air in the room. Relax, she said into the dark. I'm not going to lunge at you. That is not what I'm worried about. She gave a small, humorless laugh. Good. It would be embarrassing for both of us. Silence after that. The cabin creaked softly in the cold. Snow tapped against the window. I could hear her breathing, too careful to be asleep. Then, after what felt like a very long time, the mattress shifted. Not much. Just enough to tell me she had turned toward me. Her voice came out low. Smaller than I remembered. More tired. Owen. I kept staring at the ceiling. Yeah. There was a pause. Then she asked the one question I had apparently been dragging around for 7 months without naming. So, she whispered, you forgive me? I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because after 7 months of silence, one ruined friendship, and a bed neither of us wanted to be sharing, that was somehow still the first thing she asked. Nora must have heard the wrong thing in it because she pulled back immediately. Wow, she said into the dark. Okay, that answers that. It doesn't. Then maybe use a different sound next time. I turned my head toward her. The room was dim enough that I could only make out the outline of her face, the slope of her shoulder under the blanket, the fact that she was already bracing for me to make this worse. That part got to me, because there had been a time when Nora never braced for me. No, I said quietly. It doesn't answer it. She was still for a second. Then she asked, so what does? The honest answer would have been, I don't know yet. But that wasn't the whole truth either. The whole truth was that I had replayed that night outside the bar so many times, I could probably recite it better than my own birthday. Her face when I said she was making me feel stupid. The way she kept trying to get one more sentence in before I killed the conversation. The way I walked off before she could say anything that might have changed everything. So I said, I'm still angry at how it happened. Nora let out a slow breath. Fair. No defense? That wasn't me agreeing with you completely. Then what was it? It was me being tired. Her voice went quieter. There's a difference. That got me to sit up a little. I looked over at her. She was on her back now, staring at the ceiling. One hand twisted in the blanket like she needed something to hold on to. I didn't tell you about London, she said, because every time I tried, it felt bigger than the job. I frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said, turning her head toward me, I wasn't scared of telling you I might leave. I was scared of finding out what you were to me before I left. That landed harder than I wanted it to. Nora laughed softly then, but it was a tired sound. See? That's the part I couldn't say. The cabin creaked. Snow tapped against the window. Somewhere downstairs I heard my father cough once and turn over. The whole house felt too full of sleeping people and old feelings. You could have told me any version of the truth, I said. I know. No, I said sharper now. You keep saying that like it fixes the part where I found out from someone else. At a goodbye party I didn't even know was for you. She flinched, small but real. That should have satisfied something in me. It didn't. I know, she said again, and this time her voice shook. I know because I hated myself for it before you ever got angry. That changed the room. I pushed up onto one elbow. Then why do it? She sat up too. We were facing each other now in the dim light, knees bent under the blanket, close enough that the bed suddenly felt much smaller than it had a minute ago. Because I thought if I told you too soon, she said, you'd ask me not to go. I stared at her. And I didn't know what I would have done if you did. There it was. The sentence under the sentence. Not just fear of conflict. Not just bad timing. Something worse, something softer. I swallowed once. Oh, you still should have trusted me with it. I know, she said. Then, more quietly, but I didn't trust myself. That shut me up, because I had spent 7 months convincing myself her silence meant I had ranked below a job offer, below escape, below ambition. It had been easier to believe that than anything more complicated. Nora looked down at her hands. I packed, she said. Did you know that? I frowned. Packed? My apartment. She gave a small, broken smile. I packed books into boxes. I made lists. I even bought one of those absurd neck pillows for the flight. She looked up at me. I never made it to the airport. The air in my lungs turned useless. I was in the cab, she said. Halfway there. And all I could think was that I had managed to build an entire plan around leaving without ever surviving one honest conversation with you. Her throat moved once. So I told the driver to turn around. I didn't speak. Couldn't for a second. Because now I could see it too clearly. Nora in the back of a cab with a passport in her bag and my name somewhere in her throat, still choosing not to leave, and neither of us knowing what to do with that afterward. Then why didn't you call me? I asked. I did. That one hit like ice water. She held my gaze. 3 times. I sat all the way up now. What? You blocked me. I went still. Memory arrived ugly and complete. That night outside the bar, me in my truck. Me so angry I didn't want one more word from her. Me doing the pettiest, dumbest thing I could do and telling myself it was control. Ho, I said. Nora looked away. Yeah, oh. There are moments when your pride doesn't just crack, it collapses. That was one of them. I forgot, I said quietly. She gave me a look I could barely see and still felt perfectly. I didn't. We sat in silence after that. Not empty silence, not peaceful. The kind that forms when a story you've been telling yourself suddenly gets corrected in your own voice. Finally, I said, I thought you left anyway. I know. I thought you chose not to fight for us. I know. The second she said it, I heard the difference. She wasn't throwing my words back at me. She was tired of carrying both sides of the misunderstanding. I rubbed a hand over my face. Nora, you don't have to answer tonight, she said softly. Not really. I shouldn't have asked it like that. Asked what? If you forgive me. She looked down at the blanket between us. It sounds simple, it isn't. No, it wasn't. Because forgiveness wasn't the only thing in the room. There was the fact that she never got on the plane. The fact that I had blocked her. The fact that for 7 months I had been furious at a version of the story that wasn't even true. And underneath all of that, something worse. The fact that none of this would have hurt this much if she hadn't mattered more than I'd ever admitted. Nora, I said, and this time my voice came out rough. I don't think this is just about forgiveness. She lifted her eyes to mine. No, she whispered. I looked at her for a long second. Then I said the one thing that made her face change all over again. I think I need to know why you couldn't leave me behind. Nora looked at me like she had been trying not to answer that question for 7 months. Maybe longer. The bed creaked when she shifted, pulling one knee up under the blanket like she needed something to brace against. The lamp in the den was off, but enough light leaked under the door from the hallway that I could see the shine in her eyes. I couldn't leave you behind, she said slowly, because somewhere along the way you stopped feeling like my best friend in the simple way. That landed hard, not because I didn't understand it, because I did, too well. She kept her gaze on mine like she had finally decided she was done saving either of us from the truth. You were the person I wanted to call first, she said. The person I wanted next to me when something good happened. And especially when something bad did. You were the person I measured cities against. A tiny, tired smile. Which is ridiculous, by the way. Cities are bad at being you. I let out one breath that almost sounded like a laugh, Nora noticed. That's the most support I've had all night. I'm trying to recover from finding out I ruined my own life with excellent timing. You really did, she said softly. Fair. I leaned back against the headboard and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd spent years calling my safest person while somehow pretending that didn't mean anything more dangerous than friendship. "And London?" I asked. "It was real," she said. "Good firm. Better pay. The kind of thing you're supposed to want." But she looked down at her hands. But every version of it felt wrong if it started with losing you like that. There it was again. Not career, not distance, not pride. Me. Something in my chest went tight enough to hurt. "You should have told me," I said, quieter now. "I know." She lifted her eyes again. "And you should have listened." I nodded once. "Yeah." The honesty of that made the room gentler somehow, not fixed, just less sharp. Nora's voice dropped. "Do you want to know the worst part?" "Probably not." "You should, anyway." "That sounds familiar." "It should." A real smile flickered and disappeared. Then she said, "If you had asked me not to go, I would have stayed." The whole cabin seemed to go still. Not the snow outside, not the old woods settling in the cold. Just the space between us, suddenly too small for a sentence like that. "Nora?" "No." Let me finish." Her fingers twisted into the blanket again. "That's what scared me. Not London, not starting over. You." She swallowed once. "Because if you had looked at me and said, 'Stay,' I would have stayed for all the wrong, honest reasons." I sat there and let that hit me. 7 months of anger, of missing her, of building a story where she had chosen distance over me, and now she was telling me the real fear had been the opposite. I laughed once quietly at myself. She frowned. "That better not be a bad sign." "It's not." "Good. It's me realizing I might actually be the dumbest person in this cabin." "That's statistically possible. Your father burned a dish towel tonight." That got me for real. We both laughed then, softly, carefully, like neither of us trusted joy yet, but both needed it anyway. When the sound faded, I said, "If I'd known you were still in the city." "You didn't call." "You blocked me." "Strong point." I rubbed a hand over my face. "God." Nora's expression softened. "Owen." "No, don't do that." "Do what?" "Say my name like I'm the one who needs comforting." A pause. Then very quietly, "You do." That one nearly undid me. Because she was right. I'd spent months mourning something I thought she'd chosen. She had spent those same months living with the fact that I never gave her away back in. And somehow, even after all that, here we were. In one bed, in my sister's cabin, talking like the truth had finally gotten tired of waiting. "So, what now?" I asked. Nora's eyes searched mine. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're asking as my friend," she said, "or as the man who just needed to know why I couldn't leave him behind." No safe answer left. I moved closer, not much. Just enough that the space between us stopped pretending to be neutral. "I don't think I know how to ask as just your friend anymore." Her breath caught. Then she said in a voice that felt almost weightless, "That is a terrifyingly good answer. I'm late. I have to make up ground." "You do." We were very close now. Close enough that if either of us leaned in, this would stop being a conversation and become something else entirely. I wanted that. Clearly, dangerously, finally. Nora looked at my mouth and then back at my eyes. This is still a terrible place to realize all of this. My sister does have bad timing. She has demonic timing. Also true. Another tiny smile. Then her hand moved across the blanket and found mine. Not dramatic, not hesitant. Just Nora choosing me in the smallest possible way first. I curled my fingers around hers. And that was when the floor outside the den creaked. We both went still. A second later, Claire's voice drifted through the door. "If either of you is finally fixing your emotional damage in there," my sister said, "please keep it down. Some of us have events tomorrow." Nora buried her face in the pillow. I closed my eyes. "This family is a curse," she muttered. I laughed into the dark, and with her hand still in mine, her shoulder now warm against mine, and the whole truth of us suddenly sitting between us without any disguises left, I realized sleep was going to be impossible. Not because I was angry anymore, because by morning, something was going to have to change. Morning made everything sharper. The cabin was all pale winter light and cold floorboards, and for one strange second I forgot where I was. Then I felt Nora's hand still in mine under the blanket. That brought all of it back at once. The bed, the letters we never wrote except this story doesn't have letters. Oops, avoid. The fight. London. The blocked calls. The truth. I turned my head. Nora was awake already, looking at me with the kind of expression people wear when the night gave them hope and the morning demands proof. "Hi," I said. "Still terrible at openings." "That's fair." Neither of us moved right away. It felt like even a small movement might decide too much too fast. Then she asked quietly, "Was last night real, or are we going to get up and turn back into idiots?" I smiled a little. "I think we're probably still idiots." That wasn't the part I asked. "No," I said, shifting closer. "It was real." Something eased in her face, not all the way, just enough. "Good," she whispered, "because I don't think I can do another 7 months of pretending. You're not going to have to." That landed between us and stayed there. She searched my face for a second like she was checking whether I meant it deeply enough to survive daylight. Then she nodded once. "Okay." I brushed my thumb over her knuckles. "Okay?" "Okay means," she said, "you don't get to disappear into guilt and weird politeness now that you know the truth." "That sounds specific." "That sounds like I know you." "Also fair." A smile finally touched her mouth. That was all I needed. I leaned in and kissed her. Not careful this time, not rushed either, just sure. Like the night had stripped everything down and the morning had left us with something solid enough to keep. When we pulled back, she laughed softly against my mouth. "What?" I asked. "You really waited until my sister threatened us through a door to figure this out?" In my defense, the logistics were bad. The logistics were terrible. We stayed there another minute, forehead to forehead, smiling like people who had no business being this relieved. Then reality showed up in the form of Claire banging once on the wall and yelling, "Breakfast in 10, emotional disasters." Nora groaned and pulled the blanket over her face. "I can't go out there. You have to. Your sister is going to look at me like she arranged this with Satan." She probably did. That got her laughing again. By the time we made it to the kitchen, everyone somehow knew. Not because we announced anything, because families can smell a changed atmosphere faster than smoke. My mother smiled into her coffee. My father pretended not to notice while noticing everything. Claire looked so smug, I considered revoking her wedding lanterns. Nora sat beside me anyway, not across from me, not guarded. Beside me. And when her knee touched mine under the table, neither of us moved it away. Later that morning, while Claire dragged our parents into some fresh crisis involving centerpieces, Nora and I slipped outside onto the back porch. The snow had stopped. The trees were bright with it, all clean edges and cold sunlight. Nora tucked her hands into her sleeves and looked out over the hillside. "This feels dangerous." "What does?" "This?" She glanced at me. "Being happy this quickly." I nodded. Yeah." She waited. So I gave her the answer she deserved, not the easy one. "I don't think this is quick," I said. "I think this is late." That changed her face more than anything else I'd said. I stepped closer. "We already did the hard part badly," I told her. The silence, the pride, the missing each other and pretending it was noble. I held her gaze. "I'm not interested in doing that version again." Nora's eyes shone in the cold light. "So what version are you interested in?" "The one where we tell the truth sooner." I smiled a little. "The one where nobody takes jobs across an ocean without warning." That feels pointed. "It is." She laughed, then shook her head. "Okay. Then I want the version where you don't block me like a dramatic teenager." That also feels pointed. "It is." "Fair enough." I held out my hand. Nora looked at it, then at me. "What's this?" "This," I said, "is me starting over correctly." She slipped her hand into mine at once. A few months later, nothing about us felt fragile the way I'd feared it would. That was the strange, beautiful part. We still argued over playlists. She still stole my fries. I still drove her home when it snowed because she claimed my truck had superior emotional authority. The only difference was that now I got to kiss her in the middle of those ordinary moments, and neither of us had to pretend they meant less than they did. Claire unfortunately took full credit. If you were in my place, what would you have done when your best friend whispered, "So you forgive me?" Tell me in the comments. And if you like this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.